All right, so we're going to talk about administrating Office 365 and also a new program called the Cloud Solutions Provider Program. And essentially, that's a way you can buy Office 365. You can buy Office 365 a number of ways, right? You can go to the website on Microsoft. You can join it with a customer service rep like Microsoft or like Software One has, where you buy it via different types of programs and get various levels of discounts depending on your commit. And then you can also buy it now through a provider like Software One, where you get actually really essentially more support up front and the flexibility to raise and lower your subscription monthly on a month-by-month basis. So there's no longer a 3-year commit of some minimum number, which is a big benefit to many companies. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Office 365, but I wanted to kind of go over the main parts of Office 365. So Office 365 has various levels of entry. The base level of entry is they have these programs called like a P1 or whatever, and essentially anything you hear about today about Office 365, you can buy in pieces, which is really great because some people, they don't necessarily need, Office Pro Plus and Exchange and SharePoint and Skype. They may say, you know what, we're just ready to move our email to the cloud, and that's totally an option. And so it's a very flexible, and you as an admin can kind of, roll into this thing slowly over time. And again, using something like the CSP product we have, where you can go up and down various pieces monthly, you could change things monthly on a month-by-month basis and just kind of slowly evolve into an E-plan without having to pay for that E-plan while you're not using all the parts of Office 365. So the key pieces of Office 365 and what Microsoft obviously wants you to buy is something called an enterprise plan. It's an E3, and it includes everything that you might have on premise with an enterprise CAL. CALs are these things that are client access licenses. They give you the ability to use stuff. And what's great with Office 365 is those CALs come along with it in a subscription basis, and those CALs can be utilized on-premise as well as in the cloud, which means that if you did have a hybrid version, which means having some, for instance, an Exchange server on-site and one in the cloud, you're covered. So the pieces of Office 365 are obviously Office Pro Plus at the high end, and that Office Pro Plus is great. You get it available. It's available for 5 downloads for PCs, 5 for handheld devices, and 5 for phones. So there's 15 total installs. Right now, Microsoft just released Office Pro Plus 2016. And because that's available right now, they're actually saying 10 machine installs. I guess that's so you can install both and test them against one another. We've seen a few issues you might see on the site, though. So if you have this and you don't have an enterprise version and you have Project or Visio, be careful about installing the new version because it'll uninstall older versions. So it'll uninstall your 2013 Visio and Project until they get the 2016 versions up there. And the reason for that is there's a lot of security changes in the latest Office, and so they're basically incompatible. So Office is one piece. The next piece is Exchange. So it's an Exchange server in the cloud. It's literally as powerful as what you have on site. So as long as you don't have anything on site that's a DLL, a download link library or an executable running on your server interacting with your Exchange, you can do everything online you can do locally. Now, there's always a web interface to manage an admin, and sometimes people look at that and think, some feature I have isn't available. But the fact is those features are available through PowerShell. And running PowerShell scripts on Office 365 is really the best way to manage it. And if you search on the web for anything, pretty much you will find a PowerShell script for it. So one of the easiest ones is like you have to assign licenses to people once you get them up in the cloud, and you can run a script and just have that happen automatically for all 5,000 employees as opposed to doing it one at a time. So Exchange, again, PowerShell management's very powerful. We'll talk about that more. SharePoint is the same deal with SharePoint. In Exchange, you can have a hybrid environment. You can have some running on-premise and some running in the cloud, and choose how emails run. And in fact, that's probably the easiest way to port your email up into Office 365 and then deallocate your local servers. SharePoint's the next piece. SharePoint, the same caveat goes. If you have any DLLs or executables running on that server from some third party, those are not going to be compatible in the cloud, because obviously Microsoft can't have those running in the cloud and guarantee the uptimes they have. So you just got to make sure those are things you don't have or things that you don't necessarily want to use. There is an option, however, to keep some of the same BI technologies you have and those things, because SharePoint is now also something you can run in a hybrid context. So you can have part of your SharePoint server on-premise, the rest in the cloud, have most of it in the cloud using their processing power, and then it'll redirect down to your server for the things you need locally. And a lot of companies, some in Arizona I've worked with, have that. They have their BI being served up on their local SharePoint server, but when people go and access, they're really accessing the cloud, and it's grabbing those BI charts and information from their local server. And that's working very well for them. The third server in Office 365 is Skype for Business. And the Skype for Business is, again, right now, it's really just IM and also meetings and computer-to-computer voice. So all that comes with it. And believe me, that's a lot. In our company, we use that primarily, and that works wonderfully. The thing you might need to add, and you probably do, is a conference line. And you can actually do that. You can pay a third-party company for a conference line, attach that, and then you can have people outside the company join meetings via a phone number. And you can, basically have that dial-in capability for a conference. So that actually is really useful as well. Soon, real soon now, Microsoft said it was soon for a long time, but real soon now, Microsoft's going to offer a conference calling, not conference calling, but a telephony feature. And that telephony feature is going to allow people to dial in and dial out from Skype. So essentially your phone system can be up in the cloud. So
it's actually
that's
hosted voice.
Yeah, essentially hosted voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's hosting out your voice service.
And the other thing I forgot to mention, SharePoint really is OneDrive for Microsoft in the cloud, because what you have is you have the business capabilities of OneDrive. So not only do you have versioning and sharing, but you have the ability to manage all those files at a administrative level and set rules about them, because rights management server is also another piece of Office 365. So you've got basically all the kitchen sink of Microsoft products is up there, and then you can add other things as you go. Ben, did I forget anything else other than the hosted voice?
No, you did good. I would say that with the Skype for Business, it's everything that we know with Skype, that is voice and video. And so without the added feature, the E5 is what they're calling it, where you add the hosted voice. Outside of that, so the E3, you can do voice-to-voice, video-to-video, internal and external web conferencing. There's just no phone number for it until you get into the E5. So great stuff, actually.
We got a question and comment. If you look over those, somebody's been using the PST dial-in for a month, and they're loving it. And that's great. In fact, what we've found is the very few people that have problems with Office 365 is the internet connection to the cloud. So if things go wrong or a little funky, you want to ramp that up, and if required, do a Premier ticket, and they'll help you fix that. And so once companies have done that, they're up and running just fine. So that's been the biggest issue we've seen in the field with literally the hundreds of companies Ben and I talked to.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to our next piece, the first topic here is really that, and I think I mentioned it, with PowerShell, everything's very highly configurable, and obviously Microsoft has it set to scale. So when you need additional power, it's pretty much assigned to you as they monitor the service. So things will grow and stale as you grow, and it's not something you have to worry about. Also, the security policies for Microsoft are very, very good. They actually cover their part of HIPAA and many other standards. The thing people need to remember is when you start saying, are they HIPAA compliant, or are they PCI compliant? Those compliancies aren't just about the servers. They're also about your company and your policies and the way you handle things. So the Microsoft piece is compliant. Their servers, the disk drives never leave. They're actually, when they're taken out of commission, they're destroyed on site. They have incredibly strict policies about who has any type of physical and remote access to their servers for control. These guys are all certified and bonded. And it's also incredibly strict about who gets access to these server farms. So the way the server farms are laid out is they're essentially kind of like the back half of a semi-truck laid out, and each one of those contains hundreds, if not 1,000 servers locally. And what they do is, as those servers go bad, they just spin up new ones. Nobody even goes into these things ever. And I think like when more than half of the servers in a pod like that die, it's decommissioned. They might take it and then restructure it somewhere else, but the disks are all destroyed before that happens. So the other piece is, so the security policy is incredibly great. And Microsoft has a security site. You can go out and look at it, Office 365 Security. The other piece is the transparency and data location. That means that you can pick and know where the data your company has is stored. So don't worry that it's off in Russia at some data center or off in the EU at some data center. Or if you're in Europe, it'll stay in Europe. That's a big problem for a lot of companies. They want to make sure their stuff's local so that you'll know where your data exists. And your data, by the way, is stored encrypted on the disks out there as well. So, I mean, the transparency is there. The communications between Office 365 and your local company are all encrypted. So getting a middleman attack is almost impossible. So there's a very little you really need to worry about. We have companies every day that worry about everything. So we end up talking them through all these points. And especially as we talk later, we'll talk about a single sign-on and some of the technologies there, and that's something a lot of people ask about. So Microsoft also can do an audit on your behalf of their piece of it and provide you the certification reports. The other point, though, is that Microsoft's liability is capped. So if you say, you had $1 trillion in damages, they're not going to pay that. It's in the contract. You want to check that out. The other need to know for an administrator is really this evergreen service description. So Microsoft is constantly in the background upgrading and updating those servers. And a lot of the updates, they'll call them updates, and they're just on the fly, and they're just going to happen in the background. You're probably not even going to hear about them. So that's going on all the time. When they have a major version upgrade of anything, you're notified, and you're given a notification. We'll talk about that later, a little more detail, but you're given a notification. You have some choices about what to do next. And then there are things like just what recently happened. The Office 2016 release is out there today. Now, I would hope, I haven't talked to any enterprise administrators, that the enterprise administrators will given the ability to disallow that to be offered to their end users. Do you know that, Ben, if that was the case, or did they?
Yeah, no, they're not. Well, it's the other way around. They're not forcing any updates right now. They've just made additional functionality available.
Yeah, so it's available. It's not forced. But a
Correct.
year from now, they're going to drop the 2013 version, and also that means at that time your 2010 version won't be officially supported if you're still running Office on premise. So those are just things to kind of remember. If you're running the old Office Professional Plus on premise, that's not going to be supported as they move up in a year. So just kind of things to remember. And these changes on the server back end, same thing. They change the server back end. You can talk about when you want to allow them to upgrade. Usually the upgrades are fairly I mean, not just fairly, we haven't had anybody complain. Since the days of BPOS, things have changed dramatically. Microsoft literally rewrote the server code across the board to make it more efficient and better. That's why we've seen so many improvements in things like Exchange, being able to use, pretty much regular disk drives and not requiring SAN drives anymore. They had the database people look at Exchange and found out things like the Exchange guys were doing database opens and closes like 15 times when they only needed to do it once. So there were a lot of things that have benefited from putting all these groups together and having them review each other's code. There's always a document roadmap to tell you where Microsoft's going, so you're aware of it. That document roadmap's really important because what people and administrators forget almost every time is that it's not just about installing the software, right? It's about preparing your user base for it so you don't get flooded with problems when that software's installed. So you prepare in a couple of ways. One is we recommend you market yourselves. So you want to look like the guys in the company, not causing problems, but bringing this new great thing to everybody. So as an IT department, think about that in the future. Think about, I want to market myself so that I look like a provider of efficiency and productivity to my company. And part of that may mean, if you have a workforce that's more older, it might mean, creating some early and often training for things like using the new versions of Office, because they can be confusing. And things like OneDrive and having it synchronized to the web and be on the machine can be confusing to many people. The other thing that a lot of companies are doing too, by the way, with OneDrive is they're taking their old, D drives or whatever it was and replacing those and having people have their files actually they redirect that D drive back to the machine itself, store it in the OneDrive that synchronizes, and then they get all the benefits of versioning and backup automatically. A lot of people provide services to help migrate to the cloud. Microsoft offers a very minimal service, and that service includes what we call just a same sign-on. It's a very simple. They do the basic structure to get you up and running, but they'll help you get up and running. There are also third parties that can help you a lot. Microsoft used to fund those third parties by helping you move your email, but they no longer do that. So those third parties now can only get some funding from Microsoft to help you if you're moving your SharePoint or link. So the key message here is, as an admin, there should be no surprises. You should be receiving notifications from Microsoft before anything happens to your accounts. They also will tell you about things or problems in your user base, like one of your user base has a browser that's really not working anymore for them. So you should receive notifications about that as well. Ben, do you have anything to add about that? Surprising?
No, it's getting easier to do some of this stuff, this admin stuff, but it's still shifting the workload. So, you did good.
Yeah, the other great thing about this, we're trying to give you some of the technical stuff, but we're also trying to fill you in with some of the business things that'll help you sell this to your business if you're going to use it. And frankly, you may have it shoved down your throat because Microsoft, maybe shouldn't use that term, but Microsoft is making the ability to move up to the cloud so much cheaper for companies now than on-premise. They're actually making on-premise more expensive. So it's likely something you're going to be motivated to do. So you want to kind of plan and be ready for that now and think about it.
Right.
So the next piece really, it's insight to manage change. This is the whole point about them telling you what's going to happen in the future and what's going to happen. They provide a lot of training on site to help you. So there's places you can go for admin advice. There are videos for end users to learn learn how to utilize the apps. Frankly, the first time they log into this online, they're always a little confused. So, I think what I would do is I would use the step recorder literally to do the steps of what they do to get to that first help video and email that out. I mean, there's lots of tools like the step recorder people forget about, and if you look that up, it's a feature of Windows that allows you to literally click and do kind of a Camtasia really cheaply. So, Ben, do you have any other advice on kind of getting the organization ready?
Yeah, no. So a couple of things. As your end users are actually out there adopting Office 365 now because it's so easy to purchase. I mean, the other day I purchased it accidentally. So we had I increased my OneDrive, my public OneDrive storage to 1 terabyte, and lo and behold, it came with an Office 365 subscription. So now it's easier for your end users to start using it, and that's probably the biggest part of training. From a corporate perspective, if that's still a concern, the difference between 2013 and Office 365 isn't going to be that big a deal. We're not going to have any more 2003 to 2007 changes. And if anybody's familiar with that, that's when we introduced the ribbon, right? And that was crazy. So there's not going to be any of those types of big deal changes for going forward. But there's still several mechanisms, like John's saying, and that is there's products that will allow you to provide detailed information on how to do the new stuff, even though it's not moving around a lot. But for the most part, I think the whole issue of training, I still have conversations with customers about it, but it's not going to be as big a deal as some of the previous changes.
Yeah. If you're already up to a more current version, the training shouldn't be that bad. And like I said,
right.
The biggest training is going to be teaching them how to go to the portal. Because
exactly.
Likely, if you're a large corporation, likely no matter what size corporation you are, you don't want to just publish this out and have everybody use the click to run online to download their all their Office 365s. And we've learned that because we do these things called the Microsoft Experience Center on site with companies, and we would take in like 6 to 10 laptops. And one time I was like, hey, you guys, why don't you just try downloading and installing Office with one click? Because I thought that was pretty cool. And we took down their whole internet. So depending on the size and bandwidth you have, you don't want that. So there's actually a new tool just for Office 365 Pro Plus that is called the Office Deployment Tool. And with that tool, you actually utilize the tool to go and download Pro Plus locally. So you get kind of a different install mechanism. It brings that down, and then you basically can use a ton of switches to customize a lot of the Office 365, even as much as, say, turning off, say, programs you don't want around like Access. And I'm so hard on Access. Anyway, but you might be able to turn those off so they don't get on people's machines, so that'll save you some support tickets so they're not just asking you questions about something they're never really going to be using. So,
yeah, you also have... Yeah, and you also have the ability as an administrator to regulate, who's getting those downloads or who's doing the installs or who's available to do the installs. The administrative functions that we had today in the on-premise structure, you also have with Office 365. So I can phase out the deployment. I can restrict the deployment. I can restrict it to only come to devices that are on my network. There's a lot of features and security policies that you can implement to help you manage your bandwidth, among other things. There's also a tool to...
We didn't talk about profiles.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, let me just finish this off real quick.
Finish what you were saying, and then we'll go to profile.
Yeah, and there's also a tool that will look at your network and your utilization and make recommendations for your bandwidth for Office 365. So that's all I want to say.
Oh, that's great. And then, the next piece really is profiles. So the other thing about Office 365 is what companies are able to do is kind of look at the profile of their users, because, not everyone needs Office installed locally. I mean, everyone will claim they do, and everybody wants it. I mean, everybody wants, the full subscription to Adobe Creative Suite as well, but we can't all have that because the cost goes crazy. So basically what you do is you profile your users, and you have sets of users that will get different types of licenses. So some people might get what's called an E1, which is all of the enterprise capability except no downloadable Office. And you might have some users that are users just on a floor doing what's it called there. We're going to talk about kiosk users, but basically users out on a factory floor that are never using anything but email. So why pay for substantial email? You can go as low as something called the K plan, where they have very limited storage, but they still have email and they feel like they're part of the company. So you have lots of options. The other thing to think about, though, as you choose your plans, even these profiles, is what capabilities do you need for legal reasons? And that's going to really affect some of what you choose, especially if you need things like legal hold across the company. So we've started talking about this a little bit, but, disruptive change, right? So you're going to get users freaked out because any change. I don't know if you guys, God, I wish I could still say I was young. I'm not young anymore, and I know
sure
for me, as time goes on, I'm young at heart, but as time goes on, change is more difficult for me. Anything. I mean, not my new manager, but my old manager would say, let's have a meeting, and just, that was like, wow, what's going to happen now? I'd sit and worry about that for the next 60 minutes. So any change is disruptive, and so things like Office 365, when you're going to go to it, you want to essentially, again, like I said, you want to plan early. You want to advertise it. You want to get – this is the other key. You pick some key users that you know are really vocal. You bring them into a room and you train them, and you get them excited about it, and they will be your evangelists. So those users, the ones that complain the most, everything else, make them your best friends. Those are the ones you bring in, teach, they'll start to love it, and they'll feel like experts, and instead of saying how crappy things are, they're going to go out and talk about how great they are. So that's another trick we've learned over time. But you're going to get notified 12 months in advance, as we talked about. Microsoft does provide notice. You get emails to your service global admins. And you're able to see that. One of the things you got to make sure when you sign up for Office 365 is that you get the right people set up as admins, so that your purchasing department isn't the only admin. But people fix that pretty quick, but that happens. These 12-month timers start the day they do the release, the day they announce it. So you'll get
right, which was what 3 days ago for 2016?
3 days ago. They're doing this funny thing. Microsoft used to make a big deal about when it was coming and get ready, and now it seems like they just sneak them out on you.
They do.
It
seems
like,
that way.
We got all these new features. Yeah. So
yeah.
The new features of 2016, by the way, a lot of security features, a couple of cool things with email, the ability to create groups, individual rights management added to things like spreadsheets. There's some cool stuff. Nothing groundbreaking though, like you said, Ben. I mean, it's groundbreaking in terms of security, but nothing groundbreaking in terms of end user freaking out. But the next thing to really keep a track of is identity management. And the big thing people forget about is, what is identity management? And we split it into really two things. One is authentication and the other is authorization. And authentication, again, is verifying who a user is. And we have more and more companies now requiring two-factor authentication. It's becoming almost the norm. And one of my favorite ways of doing that now is using these, is it TPK chip? I always get the acronym wrong, Ben.
No, you're right.
It's a TPK chip. On new computers, they have a chip on there that'll hold a certificate. And you can enable that and assign that machine a certificate. So now, even if somebody gets in the middle and tries to attack the user, gets their password because they sucker into something where they're changing their password at a wrong website, it doesn't help the person that stole it because they need to be logging in from that machine. So that's probably the simplest form of two-factor authentication. Then there's phone and everything else. And if you're really interested in that and end-user password reset, then you need to start thinking about adding on Microsoft's Active Directory Premium. So Active Directory Premium has not just those key features, but it also adds the ability to log into third-party software as a service sites like Salesforce and ADP and all those others. So they're kind of a competitor with some of the other sites you'll see out there. The next piece of that, though, is security. So we know who the person is, who they are. What can they do? What do we want them doing? And one of the great things in Office 365 is there are many levels of how you can assign people. There are people that can just assign licenses to employees and create employees, and that's their admin feature. And then there are people that can just administrate, SharePoint or Exchange, and they don't have access to the other pieces, which is really what we want often, because in a large company you have very, very detailed specialists. And we all know, as myself included in this, if I have access to something, I like to play with it. And so this just, it keeps curious minds safe. So, and I know people in IT are always curious. So the other piece is that the authorization, so basically very identified. You also can allow authorization within the group based on your AD groups. So things like some certain SharePoint sites, you can lock to just certain groups of users. So it's beyond just the authorization of your login and your rights on Office 365. You need to think of the authorization of your user base to which areas of Office 365 and who they're able to share with. You might say some people can share their files with people inside the company, but nobody external. Those are all things you need to think about.
And, hey, John, just real quick on that one. Authentication and authorization, we're talking about identity management. And like John mentioned, the Azure AD Premium, that gives you a full identity management solution. So they're trying to rebrand it ID management or ID as a service or IDM as a service. You get the self-service portal and all that. But kind of back to one of the previous topics as well, is this is one of the areas that we utilize and focus on when you have compliance requirements. So if you're HIPAA or SOX or FDA or FISMA, whatever it is, this is one of the areas that you would focus on to make sure that your cloud is compliant based on whatever your needs are. And so when you get to the point that you need to decide or you're looking to move to the cloud and you have business requirements for compliancy, for federal requirements, we'll be more than happy to walk you through what that is. There's even, like John mentioned earlier in the deck, there's even some contracts that you need to sign with Microsoft to basically offload some of the liability to them, and that's where they do their own audits and provide the reports for your own compliance. So when you're talking about identity management, it's a very big conversation because there's so much behind it. And the technology that Microsoft offers in this area is huge, and it's getting better by the second. We just talked on the show yesterday about Win 10 contributing to this right here, the Office 365 identity management and the security of it. So lots of good things moving here and lots of opportunities for you to create solutions around this.
And the other thing I wanted to point out really is I know when I was a programmer in IT, I want to write PowerShell scripts. I want to deal with my database. I want to write stuff for SharePoint. That's all still there, and I know we're not talking about a lot of that right now. And essentially think of it as this way. We're training you to be a CIO. If you want to be a CIO, this is where you're at. So just kind of keep that in mind, that and budgets, which are really my implementation of hell on earth. But those are things you have to think about. So federating identity, this is really important. Okay, so you have choices when you go to Office 365, and the biggest choice is what we call it same sign-on versus single sign-on. Same sign-on means you run this thing called DIR-Sync. It might be called Active Directory Sync now. You basically, you have your Active Directory, you run a little program against your Active Directory that verifies that, everything's in the right format, especially the UPNs, because the UPN is what's used to log in now on Office 365. It'll tell you a few errors, and you clean them up. They're supposed to not be that hard usually. We haven't heard anybody say that was a blocker. Then on a separate machine, you run this thing called DIRSync. DIRSync is necessary whether or not you use same sign-on or single sign-on. And what directory sync does is it basically takes the information in your Active Directory and pushes the necessary information up to the cloud. With same sign-on, it pushes up the username and essentially a token for the password. So basically, if that token's a one-way encryption, so that with that token, if they enter their password online, it'll create essentially that token, and that they know that the person's that person. So that's same sign-on. It also puts up some of the pieces of Active Directory, like groups and things like that, so they're available. So that's great. Same sign-on's there. A lot of companies don't like that because they worry about turning off access locally and not having it turn off in the cloud. It does turn out that DIRSync, even though it synchronizes at levels you define, it defaults to every 30 minutes, and it just does an incremental sync. It doesn't do a full sync every time. When you do delete a user, it goes through immediately. But still, it's not as secure because people are entering their passwords to a cloud site, not your site. And so the thing that's better than that really is single sign-on. To use single sign-on, you need a product called Active Directory Federation Server, which is basically part of Windows Server. And the Active Directory Federation Server, when you set that up on Office 365, essentially when the user goes in and types their UPN, the first thing Microsoft does is it reads that and doesn't even let them type in their password. It redirects that web page to your Federation server where you have it, your control, and they log in through that. They're validated through your Active Directory, and tokens come back up to Office 365 saying they are who they say they are. And it keeps that token live for a while so that it doesn't have them log in all the time. And essentially because of that, sometimes it can actually go and say, oh, this guy signed on once when he came in the morning, and we're looking, he wants to log in here. Well, he's already signed in once. We're just going to say go. So it reduces the number of times the end user has to put in their username and password. Anything we should add to that, Ben?
No, you did a great job. So the way I explain this to executives is that you're extending your AD out to the cloud, so that you can get rid of all those Post-it notes on the monitors, and everybody has one username and password on the single sign-on for everything that they do in the cloud. And then again, that's auditable. So as you can tell, that's something that's very important to me.
And it's pretty easy to upgrade that to Active Directory Premium, and then they have the same sign-on for all those SaaS applications as well.
Exactly. And it's just an extension of your current AD. So when you do an Office 365 project, you definitely want to spend a lot of time on this subject and map out exactly what your tolerances are for the risks. Like John was saying, with DIRSync password sync, which we had a question in the Q&A earlier about, it is sending a hashed copy of your password out there. It's secure, and we haven't seen a single person report any issues with that. But it might not give you that warm fuzzy. So the authentication actually happens in your environment, your data center with the ADFS, the Federation services. So those are the biggest differences. We actually recommend
when you do that you have your Federation servers on premise, but that you also create an AD copy in the cloud in Azure with 2 Federation servers so that you have redundancy. So if for some reason your corporation goes down, people outside your corporation can still log in. The other thing that's really interesting too is, let's say you don't want some people that work for your company to be in your AD. It turns out you can go out to the Office 365 AD and add those users separately. So a lot of people do this with contractors where they just want to deal with them on Office 365, give them limited access, and then delete them over time. And Ben, it sounded like you were going to add something.
Well, I was just going to say, you started to make a really good point that we haven't had really a good place to do that, and that is when you start thinking about cloud computing. So when you start thinking about moving something from your data center out to the cloud, one thing that we've learned on our side of the table and working with IT shops across the country and across the world is that the whole idea of high availability isn't a topic that you have to dismiss or that you can dismiss as you go to the cloud.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why is what we're finding is there's still outages, and we're adding a number of places. We're adding a number of additional places that can go wrong that would create some type of outage. So as you do this, as you have this new business requirement that you want to use the cloud to satisfy, have that conversation, add it to your docket of conversations to have, that you're going to talk about DRBC, so disaster recovery, business continuity, because Office 365 is no different, and it, whether it's Microsoft's problem, whether it's a network provider between you and Microsoft's problem, there's so many places that can go wrong, and that doesn't mean that the solution is still not viable in the enterprise. There are things you can do to compensate for that. It's just that that's another conversation that you need to have, because if the current SLAs that Microsoft publishes, in which they're out there, aren't satisfactory to your end users, which is kind of what we need to focus on, then there are things you can do above and beyond to compensate for that, to hit those nines, to get those additional nines. So that's a different
it's very unlikely you're not going to lose mail probably on Office 365, but if something goes down, you may not be able to access it immediately. And there's a company we've worked with a lot called Mimecast that really offers a great redundancy solution for that. So we're going to try to go through the slides a little faster now, because I've realized we've taken up most of the time with 10 of 25 slides. So this, and we've talked to some of this, so we're not going to miss anything. This is basically the migration technique, and what we recommend usually is a hybrid setup of Exchange. And what you do there is you get your Exchange 2010, I hope, or more, up to the latest service pack. You install a free, Microsoft doesn't charge you for this, Exchange 2013 CAS server, and you can set it up to synchronize mail when you decide to. So you decide how many users to move at a time. And, of course, we have services to help you do that, as do many other companies. The hybrid model is really great. Some companies want to leave some of the mail from their board members or CEOs on-premise and others in the cloud. Most people are just using it as a way to move up slowly to the cloud and then decommission the things locally. There's a lot of things people think about for hybrid. Regulatory is the biggest one, right? So you just consider what you may or may not be able to move up there and have it locally. There's the other concern about certain types of products or add-ons may not be able to run in the cloud, so you may need to run a local server. There are a lot of custom third-party products that can manage Office 365, and what I'm really talking about there is things like Centrify and AD Premium as tools to help you do login. So Centrify has a very interesting type of login. They have something very much like DirSync that you run on their site. But what they do is when the user wants to authenticate, they always come back down to your Active Directory every time. There's no federation server, but they still come down, and they can do that with redundancy. And another thing I forgot to mention now is multi-forest and all that stuff. That's not a problem anymore. That used to be a real big issue, and it required a ton of work, and it's a lot less work and more easily handled now. Link on-premise is one of the things that you have to consider if you've got a telephony system. So just because you buy Link in the cloud, even if you buy this thing called an E4, which gives you the voice cal, that doesn't mean you have phone calls in the cloud right now. In fact, I think when you pay for the telephony in the cloud, it's actually going to probably be an E5 or something. But
That's right.
So that on-premise capability means basically if you have a telephony server, your Link servers are really going to remain on-premise. And you do actually have to pay for those local servers, surprisingly, even though because up in the cloud, you're just paying for the cloud, and they just use it as well. You're not utilizing our servers. Archiving is another thing we see a lot of on-premise, and then routing, MX records through things like firewalls people have that they still want to utilize, as well as the Microsoft firewalls. We've talked a lot about regulatory considerations, so I'm not going to go through a lot of that. One of the key things is if you need to search for things and have legal hold as an Enterprise 3 account, you have that, so you can put people on legal hold. You can search for documents. An interesting point is that users can, if they're not on legal hold, delete things and they go away forever. The user deletes things. I think that you have 20 days for you to go save it for them, and then it's gone. So people can delete stuff, and you can also set your own rules too. I met one company, a hospital, and they literally delete every mail after 6 months. Users have no choice, and I was blown away. And they don't allow PSTs. I was blown away. And these guys said it's been the most freeing experience of their lives. It sounded like they'd found a new religion. So,
I agree.
They didn't have to worry. The things were gone. They didn't anyway. I know what I.
But the documented procedure, they get away with that. So that's the way to do it. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So that's just something to think about in terms of regulatory. Software One, we have a lot of cloud and hosting solutions. We have services. This isn't a complete advertisement. I want to talk to you about kind of what can happen with that. So the whole point here is think about us. If you're going to Office 365 or you have service needs, think of us as more than just a software seller. And then also, don't just think of your guy you work with at Software One as somebody, guy or woman, to just take orders. You're really missing out. These guys, they are licensing and business specialists. We mostly don't, and not to say we don't have beautiful employees, but we don't go out and hire 23-year-olds that don't have any experience in the marketplace just because they might be fun to work with. We try to hire people that are very business savvy, and if you're not making them part of your team, and when you're making early decisions, you're really missing out on a key resource. The other piece you'll notice is Microsoft's response time. So Microsoft has response times, but they're pretty. It looks pretty cool, right? Severity A, 24/7, 1 hour response, and then severity B and C. The problem is Microsoft decides what severity A is. So severity A definitely doesn't apply to the fact that your CEO is not getting mail and everyone else in the company is. So just to remember that, right? So if those are problems for you, you want to be ready. And if next business day for a response isn't good enough for a severity B, whatever they've defined it as, isn't good enough, you might want to consider other plans.
That's
so
really
at Software One, we've become one of these CSP providers. And what that means is we can sell any of the Microsoft, we could sell these before, but we can sell any Microsoft online product. But when we sell it, we attach a managed service to it, which is cool. It ends up costing, I think, a little more than buying it on an enterprise agreement, but the benefits are amazing. Our basic service, when it's covered is business days, office hours, but the response times on priority items are much faster. You get to help decide the priority, right? If your CEO's down, it's a priority A for us, right? And so our services are backed with a premier contract. So if our team of people can't solve that for you quickly, we're opening premier contracts. We're doing it. So it's like a very cheap way to get premier support, essentially without worrying about paying for it. And the other real great benefit is the ability to go up and down. I was talking with a company yesterday whose company, sadly, they're tied to the oil industry, and they went from 300 employees down to 90 employees, and they still have to pay Microsoft for 300 licenses for the next 2 years, and they're dying. So that's a big thing to think about. And if you can go up and down, paying monthly what you use, that's a big deal, and that's one of the great benefits we offer. The support structure we have is very much like Microsoft's. Basically, you have a team of people at your company that are named to be able to access support. So you can't have an end user call us, but you can call us with an end user question, and we're happy to answer it, which Microsoft won't do either. So your end user has a question, they go through your support level, it comes to us. We have very quick escalation times, and then we can escalate right to Premier.
Right, and John, just to reiterate on that, all of our services and all of our service desk scenarios are backed by SLAs. Every single one of them. That you won't see any of the no commitment that you did on the Office 365 SLAs. But the other thing is notice that there's no connection between the end user and Microsoft, or the business and Microsoft. We handle the administration of Microsoft and the work with Microsoft as we troubleshoot, break fix, assign licenses, deprovision users, whatever you need us to do. As usual, though, I mean, you are the customer, so if you wanted access to Microsoft, absolutely, but you don't have to
oh, yeah, you can go direct anytime you want.
Exactly.
I had one company that could not get the problem working with Microsoft and literally moved over to a CSP product, to a CSP, and we fixed it for them.
They had that ticket open for 2 months. Yep.
Yeah, so they're our customers. So and anyway, we provide a lot of services around this stuff to help out with, and you know, just as importantly, we provide this great radio show, which is frankly a little more fun than this, on Wednesday from 9 to 11 West Coast time, and so Blog Talk Radio. I didn't put a slide in on that. I'm probably going to get in trouble. Anyway, we talked a lot about this. The same sign-on, very easy, single sign-on with a third party. About 20 of these third parties. Our favorite lately has been Centrify. They've been really great guys to work with. And then you can do single sign-on with Active Directory Federation Server, and these are really in order of difficulty. So I've talked to guys that have set up same sign-on with Active Directory Federation Server in 2 hours, and I've talked to other guys where it takes 2 weeks. But you know, and those guys that did it in 2 hours are obviously pretty much Active Directory experts. So if it takes you 2 weeks, don't feel bad. You're at that point an Active Directory expert. So put that on your resume, right? So
exactly.
So those are some of our favorite third-party products there. Assigning user roles, this is probably obvious to you, but less is more, right? You got a global admin, they own you, they can do whatever they want. I actually had a president of a company call me once and tell me he didn't trust his global admin and he didn't have the password. How could he go about taking that away without the guy knowing? And, I won't talk to you about the solutions though, but it was pretty funny. I'd never had that before. But your global admin owns you. They can do whatever they want on the site. You have billing administrators, obviously, that are assigning licenses, and we talked about this before, right? Password administrators, they just help reset passwords. You can give that to a greater number of people. And then service administrators, that's where you administrate specific services like Exchange, Link, or SharePoint. There are user management administrators for things like assigning licenses, and then, like I said before, the Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype administrators. There are common DNS domain-related issues, and Ben's going to help me with this. The key one is when do you have access to your DNS records? Because you don't think about this when you sign on. The very first thing you do with Office 365 is you go on and you put in your domain name, and then it says, hey, great, thanks a lot. Now let's verify you actually own it. Go out and enter some MX records, text records, so that I can verify you own this thing. So you need to have that availability. When you're hooking up email, obviously, you have the authority to change your MX records so they go to the right locations, right? Because whether it's hybrid or not, things need to route properly. Is there a change policy in place? Everybody forgets this, right? With the larger the company you're in, everything needs to be documented. And the right people have to do it. So you need to make sure before you make these changes that you document them so that it's all up and good with anybody that comes to audit you later, Sarbanes-Oxley or whoever, right? There are such things as split DNSs. That means like internally you use domain.net and externally you use domain.com. That can be an issue. You have to basically do some conversion in routing. And that's something, if you have a question about, ask your Software One rep, and we'll get back to you with a write-up on how to do that, because it can be a little complex, and it's something a lot of companies have run into.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, here's some great links for you to go to. The first is the deployment tool, deploy.office.com. That's the Office 365 deployment tool. You'll need that, especially when you're deploying Office 365 locally, so that it just hits your internal net and doesn't bring down your internet. The Office 365 roadmap site, again, where are they going? When are they going to make changes? How do you prepare for them? And then a very extensive list of single sign-on providers. There are a lot of these guys. Ask them how long they've been in the industry, what they've been doing. The reason we like Centrify is they've been around for over 25 years. And believe me, we don't make more money with Centrify or anything else. It's the reason Ben and I are in this great position. We don't have sales quotas, and we love our salespeople, but frankly, our job is to make sure you make the best decision for you and your company, whether it requires maybe not even buying anything. And we're happy if that's the solution too, and so is our salespeople, because what we want to do is we want to make you an all-star in your company so that you get promoted. Because, we've done our jobs, and we know that you're going to buy stuff from us as it happens anyway. So, whatever decision you make, you end up buying something, and we're happy to, sell that to you. But we don't want you to overbuy. And trust me, your providers do. You're dealing with corporations out there, and they have quotas, and their quotas mean sell more and more and more, not sell the right things to the right people. So single sign-on providers, the reason we like Centrify, been around for 20-plus years. They've got products that allow Active Directory to integrate with Linux and other servers to really help you manage, identity and access to the servers. And so they've been doing this 20 years. The cloud's just another addition for them. So they really understand this stuff. A lot of the other service providers were, Me Too's, or, wow, this looks great, I'll do an internet version, but I don't really know that much about anything except for SAML.
And John, I'm looking at this list of the link you have here, and SoftwareOne represents 90% of these companies. So we resell 90% of these solutions, and we've been trained on probably 20% of them, including Okta. And we have a lot of information that we can talk to you about, and we have a lot of customers that use a lot of these different solutions. Our preference is really, if you already have a contract with any of these companies, because there's a standard, it makes it easier to adopt one of these solutions. So if you're already a CA customer, they have a SAML-based product that will allow you to extend your Active Directory to the cloud. If you're IBM, they also do. So we'll be happy to talk to you about any of those products. Yeah.
But because we're also in the business of saving you money, one of the things we like to do, even with people we love like Centrify, we love to bring in Centrify and Okta and somebody else and make sure that they all know that they're all competing for your business, and you're learning about different things. And you may choose one product over the other just because the admin interface is better for you. A lot of these things, especially security products, are almost identical with the way they support your business. But by bringing in this competition, you can usually get a better deal. Even if you don't tell them this, but even if you have no intention of changing, often those renewals get cheaper. So it's a game. We're happy to play it with you because, basically you're a customer, and we love to help you out. Have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.